Welcome. Welcome to Congregation Beth Adam and our streaming Yom Kippur service. I'm delighted you're here. You could be participating or watching the service in three different locations, three different platforms, I should say. You might be watching on bethadam.org, that's our website. You could be watching on our Facebook page, our Beth Adam Facebook page, or our Jewish Community Facebook page, which is a streaming initiative that we began over 13 years ago. Wherever you're participating from, you are part of our community. Now, you can chat during the service. You can chat certainly on the Beth Adam the Beth Adam website. You can chat. Now, I know some people don't like to chat. If you don't like the chat, don't log in. There's a place that says you can log into chat. If you don't log in, you won't see it. Or even better, what I would suggest is typically at the bottom right-hand side of the image of the video feed, there's a little box, and you can click it, and it will make the video image full screen. You'll see full screen, and you won't see any chatting at all. You'll just simply participate and hear our service. If you are going to chat, please be welcoming, be friendly, be respectful. Remember, our administrative director, our executive director, Melissa Weiss, and Jody Rosen, who's our office manager, they're going to be on monitoring. And if you have specific questions about the congregation or about our liturgy or about our schedule of services, they're the people you should ask that question, and you should listen to their answer because they know what we're doing as we've been evolving and changing. Now, I hope we've solved our technical problems. This year has been a bumpy year. Last couple of years with COVID's been bumpy. This year, technologically, we've had a couple bumpy activities, but I think they're all good. If you're having a problem, start at your end. If you have a question, you can say, write us, but I think you're probably likely to be a problem at your end. I think we've handled our sound is all working very well, so if you can't hear, you need to check your speakers. If the service is stuttering a little bit, we stream at high capacity. You can lower that on your own computer as well. Certainly if you're watching and you want to let people know that you're participating, let them know on social media that you're participating in bethadam.org, that you find what we're doing at Congregation Beth Adam valuable. Let them know that we are here and that we exist. Let them know that they can watch the service in our archives. Once the service is over, it will then be posted. It's on archives. And so you can say to your friends who live in different time zones or different parts of the country, hey, Congregation Beth Adam, it had a really important service, an important message, and I want you to learn about it. Also, if you're able to, donations are certainly welcome. They certainly help us maintain what we are doing. If you want to make a donation, you go to bethadam.org, and there on our homepage, you'll see a contribute button, and you can make a donation that way. If you have a specific question about donations, ask Melissa. Type a question into the chat, and somebody will be able to, Jody or Melissa, will be able to answer. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're participating with us for this Yom Kippur, and our service will begin at 7:30. Erev Tov. Erev Tov, good evening. I am delighted to welcome you to Congregation Beth Adam and this, our Yom Kippur service. I'm going to ask those in the sanctuary to check your phones. Please turn them off. And if you don't know how, find a young person near you. We'll have the young people raise their hands, and they'll teach you how to turn your phone off, and they'll show you where the Instagram is in case you want to send a picture. And we begin our service on page 40.
This is the opening of a new gate and the closing of another. This is the beginning of a new season and the closing of another. Tikle shana vekileloteha, tachel shana uvirkoteha.
As our ancestors have done for thousands of years at the season, we gather on Yom Kippur to continue our period of self-reflection. We have set this interval apart from and above the routine of everyday life. As we join in this service, we assume the responsibility for self-scrutiny. We declare our willingness to consider every aspect of our lives.
This is the opening of a new path and the closing of another. This is the beginning of a new life and the closing of another. Tikle shana vekileloteha, tachel shana uvirkoteha.
We walk the path of self-examination and recognize that it is not an easy one. We find that we have failed to hear the cry of those who need us. We have faltered and turned aside from our responsibilities. We have fallen short of our goals. On this evening, as we hear the Kol Nidre, we allow ourselves to feel the pain of our failures, to understand the depth of our shortcomings. By walking this path, we can find self-acceptance. We can allow ourselves to grieve for what we are not. If we can determine new paths and set a straighter course, then we can hope for a better future.
This is the opening of a new journey and the closing of another. This is the beginning of a new year and the closing of another. Tikle shana vekileloteha, tachel shana uvirkoteha.
Lakol zeman ve'at lechol hafetz tachat hashamayim. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to reap. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather them up, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time for love and a time for hate, a time for war and a time for peace.
As the leaves slowly turn from green to brown, we turn our thoughts inward. As days change from the bright sunshine of summer to the more pensive, quiet coolness of the fall, we allow ourselves a time for thought. Our thoughts, like kites on a windy day, fly freely, soaring amongst the clouds, coming to rest against the ground. We think about those we love, some no longer with us, others growing, changing, moving onward. Often we wish we could, like a camera, record a moment in time and hold it forever still. Yet we cannot, for the river of time surges, bringing change, upheaval, carrying us into the unknown. What is left for us to do? We cannot halt the turning of the seasons, the passage of time. We cannot turn back, altering the days, the years that have been spent. We cannot bring back the loved ones we have lost, nor keep our young from growing older. And so we turn our thoughts inward, reflecting on the moments we have cherished, determined to give value to moments which lie ahead. We turn inward to find ourselves, to listen to our inner voice. We turn outward to find others, to share moments of compassion and love. It is at this time, as the old year gives way to the new, that we look inward, reach outward, reaffirming the values that we cherish. At times we face a world cold and foreboding. We see suffering without cause. We see cruelty without reply. Looking into the blackness of the night sky, we are aware that the universe swirls, indifferent to human concern, and our courage may falter. Through a film of darkness, we search for light. Baruch Haor Ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch Haor Ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch Haor Ba'yom Tov, blessed is the light of this season. Like a beacon shining against a blackened sky, the flames of the candle lighten the darkness of our spirit, bringing forth warmth and comfort. The candles give us light, a healing far more powerful than darkness. We, like our ancestors, light the candles to dispel the darkness, to mark the beginning of Yom Kippur. We light these holiday candles to revitalize our ties to the past, to rekindle our determination to remember the tenacious spirit of our people, to remember the ties to our families and friends, to remember the moments of beauty and calm, to remember the times of love and laughter. We kindle the flame to mark the renewal of hope, the renewal of our energy as we search for the true sources of light. As the flame burns, we are comforted by the light, by the warmth springing up anew.
Baruch Haor Ba'olam, Baruch Haor Ba'adam, Baruch Haor, Baruch Haor, Baruch Haor Ba'yom Tov.
Yom Kippur is the day of honesty, a day to see the truths of our existence free from ornament with guileless eyes. Yom Kippur is the day of honesty, a day to acknowledge, then respond to the brevity of our lives, a day to examine the fears that make us mean-spirited and prejudiced, a day to recognize the significance of our action and our inaction, a day to steal away from the noise, to discover stillness and to listen. Yom Kippur is the day of honesty, a day to shed the tired skin of deception and feel the tenderness of truth.
Etched upon the memory of our people are images past, words once spoken, lessons once taught. The memory of generations resides within us. As we hear the Kol Nidre, we are connected to those moments, to the stories of time lost to our consciousness. The melody beckons us, calls us to reach beyond our present lives, returning to our distant past, imagining our futures, yet unlived. And it is a custom for those who are able to rise at this time to stand during Kol Nidre. It's not necessary if you don't want to. Let all our vows and oaths, all the promises we make, and the obligations we incur on ourselves between this Yom Kippur and the next be null and void, should we after find ourselves unable to fulfill them. Then may we be released from them.
Kol Nidre v'yesarei v'charamei v'konamei v'chinuyei v'kinusei u'shavuot din darna udaish devana udaya charimna vedia sarna alnav shata mi yom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim haba aleinu latova kol chon icharadna v'chon kol chon yechon sharan shvikin shavitin beleilinum vutalin Lashrim Velakayamin Dindarna Lanire Ve'asarana La Esare Ushavuatana la Shavuot.
Please be seated.
These high holidays, we've chosen to read the Torah portion of Sodom and Gomorrah. We read it on Rosh Hashanah. We'll read it again tomorrow, the rest of the Torah portion, and we're incorporating it into some of our remarks. Tonight, I want to read a midrash, a Jewish legend based upon that legend. As Abraham walked the streets of the city, he was dismayed with what he saw. As he walked, he saw them. One laid in the gutter, another sought handouts from passers-by. But it seemed to Abraham that no one else saw the homeless souls who roamed about. As the people walked along the street, they simply stepped over those they did not wish to see. Abraham was appalled. So much despair, so little hope. As Abraham passed, a gnarled, empty hand was stretched before his eyes, and the only word he understood was hungry. As Abraham reached to take money from his purse, a man stopped and said, "Oh, you must be new to our city. You don't know these people. They do not deserve your pity. They do not warrant your concern. Keep your money. You earned it. They haven't." This said, the man departed on his way. Abraham couldn't believe what he heard, for before him was but a child, a frightened, lonely child whose face was gaunt and whose eyes were set deep in his skull. Abraham gave the child his money as those around him snickered. As Abraham spoke to the boy, he heard a cry for help. He chased the sound as fast as he could, but the streets were narrow and no one was willing to move out of his way. As he ran, sweat dripped into his eyes, and the cries for help grew more anguished. The faster he ran, the more powerless he felt, for he could not find the one who needed him most. Now the shouting had stopped. Abraham was too late. A moment later, he turned the corner only to find a frightened woman, too terrorized to speak. Abraham reached out to help her, but she turned in fear. Abraham looked around. "Please," he pleaded, "this woman needs our help. Please, can someone tell me what happened?" "I don't know," said the woman, looking down from her window. "I didn't see a thing," said the man sitting on the stoop. As Abraham cared for the victim, those who passed just turned their eyes, not wanting to see that which disturbed them. For a full day, Abraham walked the city. Each hour was more painful than the last. Finally, Abraham had realized why the punishment had been determined. As Abraham departed from the city, a lone figure ran up to stop him. "Abraham, we do not understand," pleaded the resident of Sodom. "Abraham, what has befallen us? Why are we to be punished? Why is our city to be destroyed?" "There are those among you who have no place to sleep. There are those among you who have no food to eat," replied Abraham. "But every city has their homeless. Every city has their poor," challenged the resident. "Every town. We are no different than they. Why are we being punished?" "Crime was committed here," said Abraham. "Yes, there's some," said the resident, "but all cities have their crime. All cities have their villains. Why must we, who did nothing, suffer for the actions of others?" The crime that have been committed are not just your actions, but your inaction. You stood silent as those about you brought harm to the weak. You watched wordlessly, even as injustice prevailed. When the poor turned to you for help, you turned your eyes. When the homeless sought shelter, you barred the doors. When the cries of those in pain reached your ears, you feigned deafness. No, it is not for what you did that you are to be punished, but for what you did not do. We have acted against life, both willingly and unwillingly, both knowingly and unknowingly. We have denied the best within us when we avert our eyes from the sight of the afflicted. We have acted against life when we block our ears to the cries of the hungry. We have denied the best within us when we turn our backs on the plight of the dispossessed. We have acted against life when we silence our tongues in the presence of wrongdoing. We have denied the best within us when we mute our voices, refusing to join those who protest against injustice. We are sorry for our actions.
Imam haslicha, Imam haslicha, Imam haslicha.
We've acted against life. We close our hearts to the pleas of others who need our help. We've denied the best within us when we become numb to the suffering of others. We've acted against life when we step away from challenge, letting others act in our stead. We have denied the best within us when we cling to the safety of the known, too timid to take risks. We are sorry for our actions.
Imam haslicha, Imam haslicha, Imam haslicha.
We have acted against life when we place more value on youth and beauty than on age and wisdom. We've denied the best within us when we fail to call those who sit waiting for the sound of our voice. We've acted against life when we narrow our visions, demanding conformity from those we love. We have denied the best within us when we see our children as reflections of ourselves, not respecting their right to be different. We are sorry for our actions.
Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha.
We have acted against life when we succumbed in the intoxication of ambition at the expense of our family. We've denied the best within us when we are too busy to spend time with those we love. We have acted against life when we withhold a touch, leaving to others the drying of tears. We've denied the best within us when we hurt others, yet we do not say we are sorry. We have acted against life when we allow the moments to tick by without challenging ourselves. We have denied the best within us when we accept mediocrity and fail to test our limits. We have acted against life when we let pain and illness blind us to beauty. We have denied the best within us when we fail to appreciate what we have, dwelling on what we have not. We are sorry for our actions.
Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha.
We have acted against life when we worry about the future, regret the past, and ignore the present. We have denied the best within us when we have grown too old for child's play. We have acted against life at this moment if we let the opportunity for self-examination drift by due to complacency or passivity. We have denied the best within us when, knowing our principles, we choose not to act upon them. We are sorry for our actions.
Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha, Imam haslecha.
We have transgressed against life when year after year we mouth the words of these services, never turning our words into actions.
I met my best friend Dave in Colorado on the second day of college, 37 years ago. We hit it off right away and began to spend lots of time together, but it wasn't until the winter of that year that we became true friends. I was at a late-night party on the other side of campus when a mutual friend came up to me and asked if I had heard about Dave. Heard what? I asked. That he's sitting out in the hallway back at the dorm crying, said the friend, before heading out into the crowd. I immediately returned to our dorm and found Dave sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. I sat down beside him and he turned and said, "She's dead. My mom is dead." I later found out she had died tragically and unexpectedly. Other friends then arrived, and we finally settled him into bed. And as I was setting up his flight back to New Jersey, I thought about how hard it would be to fly back alone. So I made a same-day round-trip ticket for myself. We left the next morning and sat in silence for the whole 4-hour flight, just being together. No words were necessary. When we landed at the Newark airport, I met his family for the first time. Dave went with them, and I flew right back to Colorado Springs. 24 years later, the first person to see me before my dad's funeral was Dave. As he hugged me, I said, "Thank you for being here." And he said, "Of course, where else would I be?" Over the last 37 years, Dave and I have had many adventures together, most legal, traveled the world, and we have been at each other's life events, weddings, and funerals, b'nai mitzvahs, baby namings, and all things in between, including being each other's birthday surprise visitor no less than 5 times. And amazingly, for the last 25 plus years, Dave has been my first call every morning, no fail. I actually spoke to him this morning, and if he's watching, "Hey Dave, I finally got you to a Kol Nidre service." And he would say, "Of course, where else would I be?" Of course, where else would he be? I would like to share a story of 2 other lifelong friends. In 1961, Sandy Greenberg was wallowing in despair. Up until that moment, his life had been full of promise. He was brilliant, he was musical and athletic. In high school, he was elected president of the student council and of his senior class. Upon graduation, he won a full scholarship to Columbia University in New York and was pursuing his dreams of becoming a lawyer. He had close friends and was dating the love of his life, Sue, who he had met in the 6th grade. But in 1961, Sandy felt like all the promise of his life had abandoned him. For years, ophthalmologists had failed to diagnose his vision challenges correctly, resulting in a botched treatment that hastened the deterioration of his remaining vision and forced doctors to perform a surgery which ironically saved his eyeballs while destroying what remained of his sight. Sandy was deeply depressed. He left college, moved home to Buffalo, gave up on his dream of becoming a lawyer, and had resigned himself to being a burden on his family for the rest of his life. But suddenly, out of the blue, his best friend and college roommate, Art, showed up at his door. Art begged him to come back, wanting him not to give up on his dreams. But Sandy told Art, "There's no way. How could he do the class readings without being able to see? How could he take tests? Forget studying. How could he find his way to class?" Art immediately offered to help. He said he would be Sandy's eyes. He would walk him to class and read him his books and quiz him in preparation for his exams. When Sandy came back to school, he was blown away by Art's kindness. Literally every day, Art escorted him to class and helped him to study and walked him home and helped him with every single task so that Sandy could continue his education and pursue his dreams. In fact, because of Art's kindness, Sandy was able to take more classes and received higher grades than he had ever earned before losing his vision. But Art didn't just help Sandy with his schoolwork. One day, Art and Sandy were about to hop back on a train to campus when Art suddenly apologized to Sandy, telling him, "I have to stay in town to complete an assignment." Sandy was understandably upset. He had to get back to campus for a meeting, so Sandy started back on his own. It was difficult without a seeing eye dog or a cane. He kept walking into walls and people. He gashed his shin and kept stumbling upon the wrong trains. But after a couple of hours, Sandy managed to get himself onto the right train and off on the right stop, too. As he exited the train, he sensed his friend Art and heard his familiar voice say, "Welcome home." Art had been there with Sandy all along, watching from a few paces behind and in his silence, cheering him on. Up until that point, Art had been helping Sandy by staying by his side, by being his eyes, by doing everything he could to support him. But on that day, Art helped by stepping aside and being quiet. He gave Sandy the gift of independence, and because of Art's quiet support, the support that Art showed him, that he could do anything he ever dreamed of. And Sandy not only graduated, but went on to have a brilliant career as a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist who has spent much of his life helping other people who are blind. Of course, where else would Art be? Art's kindness was an inspiration to his friend. It was life-changing. Art gave of his time, and when Sandy was in the darkness of his despair, Art was able to be his eyes until Sandy could reimagine his own light again. But it wasn't in just the big moments that difference was made. It was in all the small, inconvenient moments, the times when Art was tired or frustrated or struggling to reach Sandy, that the true light was shown. It was in the just showing up and sticking around in another's time of need, especially when it was hard to do, that mattered. National Public Radio had a program years back called This I Believe. The program engaged youth and adults from all walks of life in writing and sharing and discussing brief essays about core values that guided their lives. I've always remembered one particular story shared by a lawyer from Syracuse, New York, named Deidre Sullivan. She spoke of advice she received from her father that changed the way that she engaged in the world. This is what Deidre said: "I believe in always going to the funeral. My father taught me that. The first time he said it directly to me," Deidre recalls, "I was 16 and trying to get out of going to visitation hours for Miss Emerson, my old 5th grade math teacher. I did not want to go. My father was unequivocal. 'Dee,' he said, 'you're going. Always go to the funeral. Do it for the family.' So my dad waited outside while I went in. It was worse than I thought it would be. I was the only kid there. When the condolence line deposited me in front of Miss Emerson's shell-shocked parents, I stammered out, 'Sorry about all this,' and stalked away." But for that deeply weird expression of sympathy delivered 20 years ago, Miss Emerson's mother still remembers me, remembers my name, and always says hello with tears in her eyes. Deidre continues, "That was the first time I went unchaperoned to a funeral, but my parents had been taking us kids to funerals and visitation hours as a matter of course for years. By the time I was 16, I had been to 5 or 6 funerals. I remember 2 things from the funeral circuit: bottomless dishes of free mints, and my father saying on the ride home, 'You can't come in without going out, kids. Always go to the funeral.' Sounds simple," Deidre recalls. "When someone dies, get in your car and go to the visitation hours or the funeral. That I can do. But I think a personal philosophy of going to the funerals means more than that. Deidre says, always go to the funeral means that I have to do the right thing, even when I really, really, really don't feel like it. I have to remind myself of it when I can make some small gesture, but I don't really have to or definitely don't want to. I'm talking about those things that represent only inconvenience to me and the world to the other person. You know, the painfully unattended birthday party, the hospital visit when I have other plans, the Shiva call from one of my ex's uncles, the sitting quietly with a crying friend. In my humdrum life," Deidre continues, the daily battle hasn't been good versus evil, hardly so epic. Most days, my real battle is doing good versus doing nothing." She continues, "In going to the funerals, I've come to believe that while I wait to make a grand heroic gesture, I should just stick to the small inconveniences that let me share in life's inevitable occasional calamity." On a cold April night 20 years ago, Deidre's father died a quiet death from cancer. His funeral was on a Wednesday in the middle of the work week. Deidre recalls, "I had been numb for days when for some reason during the funeral, I turned and looked back at all the folks in the church. The memory of it still takes my breath away. The most human, powerful, and humbling thing I've ever seen was a church at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday full of inconvenienced people who believed in going to the funeral. Deidre's story and its simplicity and profundity has always stayed with me. So much of life is just about showing up, and especially when it's inconvenient. How much of my relationship with Dave or Art's relationship with Sandy were those small showing ups, and then realizing that where else would we rather be? For the truth is, we don't really know which moments of showing up are going to shift someone's mood or someone's day, or in Sandy's case, someone's life. We never know what type of impact we might make. Rabbi Larry Kushner wrote this beautiful poem about such connections. He wrote, "Each lifetime is a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. For some, there are more pieces. For others, the puzzle is more difficult to assemble. Some seem to be born with nearly completed puzzles, and so it goes. Souls going this way and that, trying to assemble the myriad parts. But know this, no one has within themselves all the pieces to their own puzzle. Like before the day when they used to seal jigsaw puzzles in cellophane, ensuring that all the puzzle pieces were there, everyone carries with them at least one, and probably many pieces to someone else's puzzle. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't, and when you present your piece, which may seem worthless to you to another, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, you are a messenger. All of us here tonight can help another complete their puzzle by being there to offer a piece, a small moment in time, a light in their darkness. Which brings us back to our best friends, Sandy and Art. When Sandy lost his vision, he used to complain that everything was darkness. So Art playfully began calling himself Darkness. He would say, "Darkness will read to you from the Iliad, and darkness will now walk with you to classes." In response, Sandy would always say back, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." Years after they graduated from Columbia, Sandy got a call from Art. Art was pursuing his dreams of becoming a musician and wanted to record a record with his high school friend, Paul Simon. The only problem was that they were short $400. Art asked Sandy if he could borrow the money. Sandy and his wife, Sue, only had $404 in the bank, but that didn't stop Sandy from giving his friend what he needed. Paul and Art's first album included the song Sounds of Silence, which went on to become a #1 hit, as did the folk rock duo Simon and Garfunkel. Art Garfunkel says that when he befriended Sandy, my real life emerged. I became a better guy in my own eyes and began to see who I was, somebody who gives to a friend. Art didn't just give to a friend, he made it possible for Sandy to complete his dreams. Because of Art's kindness and presence, Sandy graduated with honors and went on to have an illustrious career, building companies that work to eradicate blindness in the world and to support those with vision loss. Because of Art's kindness, Sandy has fulfilled his purpose on the earth to ease the suffering of those who have lost what he has lost. And because of Sandy's kindness, Art had the opportunity to fulfill his musical dreams and have a long and incredible career. Without their friendship, it's entirely possible that neither Sandy or Art would have achieved his goals and completed his puzzle. And together they realized blessings that no one could ever imagine. What is true for Art and Sandy is true for all of us. When we show up for each other and when we share our puzzle pieces in action or simple presence, we realize that we are all interconnected and can bring light to darkness, to others and the world. Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again. In this new year, let us show up in the small moments, in the light and in the darkness, and in the quiet times in between, where else would you want to be?
We are all prone to inertia. Our lives tending to remain on track, immersed in details. Except for occasional turbulence, we stay fixed in a web of routine. The diversity of life's possibilities go unexplored. Our unknown potential remains dormant. The world's problems abound wherever we look. Events become critical, and we are made instantly aware. Quickly, though, we calculate the distance misfortune strikes from our own lives and move on, steering a safe course down a familiar road. What finally moves us in new directions? What propels us to make significant choices, inspires us to make bold changes? Occasionally, hearing of the illness of a friend or a loved one, experiencing the shock of a sudden death, we pause, looking inward for a moment. It seems that as we notice the quickening pace of time, when the quiet unveiling of our own mortality sets in, only then are we moved to resolution. When we confront the pain that life offers, only then do we examine the web we have woven into our lives. The beneficence of time lulls us to sleep, but the reality that we lose our loves, our life, our world, awakens us to singular opportunity. Too often, we wait for the paths of life experience to prod us, but we need not wait for sorrow to urge our response. We can look to ourselves rather than life's bitter experiences to question our use of time, to use this precious, limited resource in a more vital way. We must come to know our choices, to begin celebrating our lives, to revalue the web of our existence. We must challenge ourselves to find the time and the strength to rejoice in life's pleasures, give time to our loved ones, expend energy to make our world a better place. May we use time wisely, savoring its limits, considering the measure of our day. We pause now for silent thought and silent reflection.
We remember now those with whom we shared, those who gave us strength, those we cherished, those we loved. We remember them at daybreak as the sun peeks over the distant horizon. We remember them at dusk when vision is difficult and shapes are poorly defined. We remember them at the first signs of spring as the first blossoms bloom. We remember them in the stillness of winter as the stark branches are set against a cold winter sky. We remember them when we are alone and afraid of tomorrow. We remember them at times of joy, wishing to share with them once more. We remember them at times of difficulty, waiting for advice that does not come. Remember them always. They're a part of us now. We take this time to remember those in our hearts and those in our neighbors' hearts and in the strangers' hearts. and we remember those that no one has, there is no one to remember them. As we rise, if you are able, En b'dei hamavet hakoach la'akor ma shetamum balev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow we remember. With our courage and our strength we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow we remember. Im dama'ut be'einenu be'et avilenu nishmor al zecher ahuvenu. With our tears and our sorrow we remember.
May the memory of good people bless our days. Bless our days, bless our days. Zecher tzadik livracha, Zecher tzadik livracha.
May the memory of good people bless our days. Please be seated.
Averot sheben Adam lachavero, ein Yom HaKippurim, mekaper ad shiratzeh et chavero. It says in Yoma, a tractate of the Talmud, one's unloving acts, misdeeds, selfishness, or any act that causes another human being pain is not forgiven or forgotten on Yom Kippur until one makes peace with the one who is wronged. We have been wronged, and we have wronged others. And though we gather with the best of intentions, what we have done is not changed by our presence here. Those whom we have treated badly still feel the sting of our actions. The words we spoke in anger echo in the ears of those who felt our wrath. Our loved ones have been bruised by our misdeeds. The sins we have committed were not erased as we crossed the threshold of this place. Our presence this night does not serve as penitence for cruelty we may have inflicted, neglect we allowed, selfishness we enjoyed. And though the past remains, there is the potential for us to repair the damage we have caused. But this means we must find a new strength, grounded in self-reflection, honesty, humility. Too often, we fear revealing to ourselves and to others that we're limited, that our actions aren't perfect, that our judgments may be flawed. We fear that admitting our mistakes, acknowledging our feelings, knowing we have wronged will weaken us in the sight of others. It is only if we overcome these fears that we can achieve a strength we do not yet know. Tonight, Tonight we allow feelings that often lie dormant to surface. Regret, disappointment, shame, anger. Not as self-flagellation, but as motivation. We leave here committed to changing, correcting, repairing that which we have done, for the meaning of tonight lies not in what we speak here, but in what each of us does when we leave this place. The meaning of this night lies within the acts of repair that we are willing to attempt. The meaning of this night lies in our own apologies and in our willingness to hear when others seek our forgiveness. Though our service will draw to a close, our task, it has just begun. Our service draws to a close, and we hope that you join us again tomorrow for our Yom Kippur morning service at 10:30, whether online or in the sanctuary. For those of you in the sanctuary, there are sheets that tell you the times of the rest of our services, about our hybrid Torah study at 1 o'clock, our children's service at 2:30, our online memorials at 3:30, and our congregational bricks and mortar memorials at 4:30. Take a look. And as we draw to a close, I want to thank Rabbi Burstein, Reen Marks for reading, Terry Barr for singing, Andrew Herbert for singing, and Scott Booza, as well as those, Joey Taylor and Larry Appleblatt, who are making sure those who are online can follow the service, and Melissa Weiss and Jody Rosen, who've been monitoring. It takes a group of people to create a service together, and it takes a congregation of committed people to create what we've done. For those who are able at this time, please feel free to rise as we close our service.
Kenya he, 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 Kenya he.
May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the new year bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings of the day, and may we know blessings of the night. May health be for our children and for all people, and all things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings, and may we know blessings as we depart. May we live each day of this new year with peace and wisdom in each heart. Kenya he,
Kenya he, Kenya he, Kenya he, Kenya he, Kenya he, Kenya he, Kenya he.
may it be a year of health, a year of peace for all people everywhere. Shana Tova. We're not going to do a receiving. We're not going to do it.